Ain't that some shit? All right, what's up, fellas? Well, today I am installing a new carbon fiber front lip, trying to give the F80 a new look. A couple of months ago, some genius in a minivan on the freeway thought it would be a really good idea to swerve into a giant piece of shredded tractor-trailer tire, thereby sending it airborne. And despite my best evasive maneuvering techniques, landed right on the front corner of my car, perfectly on the lip. Could have been a lot worse, but landed right on the corner of the front lip, ripping it halfway off. The worst part about it, my dash cam did not record it. So the dash cam stopped working about an hour before the incident happened, and then it picks back up when we get to the gas station to look at the damage. So I was kind of bummed about that because I'm like, if it was gonna happen, at least I could have some footage for this video, but alas, we missed it. So that kind of brings my case to talking a little bit about why I don't think it's a great idea to spend a whole lot of money on really expensive carbon fiber if you have a driver's car. I think that if your car sees a lot of time on the road, if you're not trailing it to car shows or leaving it in the garage all the time, I don't know that it, at least for me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to buy expensive carbon fiber. In my opinion, you wanna find that happy balance between good enough quality to where you're gonna get a good looking piece of carbon fiber, decent fitment, all that stuff, but not so expensive that it's gonna bum you out if you have to replace it in a year, 6 months, 2 years, whatever it is. Because it's almost probably going to happen if your car, again, sees a lot of road time. I don't drive a whole lot locally, but going, to faraway car shows, and especially taking the kid back and forth to college, which is like a 700-mile trip one way. And with that, of course, comes all the problems with being on the road with rock chips and so on and so forth. Granted, it's been 2 years since I put my original front lip on, so it was time for a new one. I don't know that it needed to go out like that, right? This is kind of not very, sort of unceremonious. In any case, so that brought me to the new search for a front lip, which is kind of a bummer because I spent a lot of time deciding on the original one. My original front lip was a Vera style from RW Carbon, and there's a lot of options out there for front lips for the F80, but I don't love most of them. And I almost did that one again, but I kind of wanted to go with something a little bit different. So my two evaluators were the Adro, I think that's right, Adro Carbon Fiber Setup. I really like their stuff. The problem with them, one, they are on the pricier side, but two, their carbon fiber really is only for the F82. Now, granted, the F80 and the F82 have the same front end, so I could have gotten their front lip, but the styling, if I wanted to match styling with the rest of it, which again, I really love their stuff, but it would not have matched very well. So I ended up going with my second choice, which was the HMV1 style front lip from Horizon Motorsports. Now, one of the things that I really liked about the Vera style front lip was that it hugs the corners right off to the sides in the bottom of the center, right next to the lower splitters. But it was an open gap there, and it always drove me crazy when I was washing my car, trying to cram the wash mitt in between there to try to clean it up a little bit. So what I like about the HMV1 style is that it has that same sort of molding where it fills in that space, but it's a whole piece. Now, in addition to the front lip today, I'm also gonna do a set of lower splitters, carbon fiber lower splitters. Now, if you saw the video that I did 2 years ago when I installed the front lip, I spent a little bit of time talking about how I didn't like the lower splitters because when you put them on, at least for the F80, I don't like how they create a sort of a weird oval, I guess it's more like a trapezoid, but the bottom center piece, it just, when you have the splitters on there, especially, it depends on the color of the car, right? So if you have a gray or black, we have a Nardo gray F80 with lower splitters, I think they look awesome on that car. But for certain color cars, in particular Yasmarina Blue, I just didn't really think it would look very good. However, I decided to give them a whirl. These are the V2 style, also from Horizon Motorsport. So we're gonna do a full setup today. I don't know if I'm gonna do, the upper splitters are still in place. I don't know what I'm gonna do with those, and maybe keep them, maybe get rid of them, but at the very least, we're gonna do the lower splitters and the front lip. Now, before we get to the installation, real quick, Horizon Motorsports, I've never bought anything from them before. I probably would have gone back to RW Carbon, just because I bought all my other stuff from them, and I've been really happy with the products and the service and all that stuff. But they didn't have the style front lip that I wanted, and so figured I'd give these guys a shot and pick something up. And I gotta say, I did have issues with the order. I'll talk about it in a little bit, but their customer service was fantastic. I thought they did a really great job. Alex in particular thought they did a great job at resolving the issue. So I know we really shouldn't be surprised by that, right? If you're gonna buy something from a company, especially something that costs hundreds of dollars, that kind of should be standard fare, but I'm sure, as most of you know, buying parts and stuff like that, it's really not always a guarantee. So anyway, gotta call it out. Everybody's quick to complain when it's a problem, but gotta call it out when you actually do get good customer service. So again, Horizon Motorsports, thank you guys for that. So, all right, actually, before we get to the installation, let's go through the tools that we're gonna use, and then we'll install. Dude, it's hot out here today. I love summer. I wish it were always summer, but yeah, it's hot out here today. There's always yard work going on. I complain about this in almost every one of my videos. Can you hear that? Commercial space, man. Commercial space. So first up, you got the socket wrench with an 8mm bolt. Now for this lip in particular, it looks like the 4 center holes line up with the 4 8mm bolts that are underneath the front center of the bumper that hold the plastic tray in place. So it looks like I'll be able to reuse those bolts to hold them in place. And then a Phillips head screwdriver for the rest of the screws. Got some Carb Pro eraser here. Now this, you can use any kind of isopropyl alcohol wipes, stuff like that. Some kits that have some like carbon fiber kits come with them, mine didn't. But this stuff will do a good job of just cleaning up the area, making sure it gets rid of any kind of like oils and stuff like that that might prevent the tape from adhering, specifically for the lower splitters, because that's the only way they're held into place. Got this kit of screws from Amazon. So the screws that came with the front lip for my kit weren't going to work. They were way too short. I might have been able to use like 2 of them, but for the rest of them, they just weren't long enough. So I found this kit on Amazon. These are black Phillips truss head wood screws. So they're pretty decent size. They come in a whole bunch of different sizes, but in terms of thickness, they look like they're thick enough to hold it in place stably, but not too much so that you're gonna be like boring into your bumper. So that should do pretty well. Got some 3M tape. The kit that I got did come with tape, but I've used this for some other stuff. It works really, really well, and I kind of just wanted to use up what I had. So some 3M double-sided tape, and then finally some painter's tape. So if you're doing this job by yourself, specifically for the front bumper, this is just good to, if you want to do a test fit, I use the painter's tape just to hold the bumper in place so I can sort of just get a look at, make sure that it's gonna be a reasonable fit before I start screwing it in. Okay, so now a quick overview of all the detailing stuff that we're gonna use for this. I figure, you know, if we're gonna go through the trouble of installing all this carbon fiber, why not make it look really, really good? So first up, again, Carb Pro eraser. So this is just to make sure that all the oils and dirt or anything like that wipe down off the carbon fiber. Next up, I got some Nanoskin Glide here as a lubricant for the auto scrub. So this is basically a synthetic clay bar. You can use real clay too, obviously. But I'm just going to make sure that all the contaminants are out of the carbon fiber before using the polishing stuff. Particularly, again, the upper splitters, because they've seen a lot of road time. But the star of the show is the Dr. Beasley's Carbon Glaze. So this is a polish specifically for carbon fiber. I've used it on a couple of parts before, specifically in my engine bay, and dude, it does some mirror finish stuff for carbon fiber. Really, really good stuff. However, this stuff is not for hand use. It is specifically meant for a machine polisher. So that brings us to the Rupes 3-inch Mini Bigfoot. So this is really good for obviously smaller panels and stuff like that. It's good to have a range of different sizes. Kind of wish I had the 1-inch polisher, like that's kind of next on my to-do list, but this will do a good job for what we're installing today. But I'm gonna use a foam applicator pad in order to get the Dr. Beasley stuff onto the carbon fiber. So you just get this on the pad, work it in a little bit, and then I have a Rupes DA Fine High Performance Fine Polishing Foam Pad for the polisher in order to really buff it into the surface. So that is our setup today. It's a little bit of overkill, but again, if you're gonna do something like this, might as well do it right. Before I get started, I'm gonna clean off the area. Again, I'm using Carb Pro eraser. I really like eraser. I use it a bunch of different places during the decontamination process, but anything that's just to make sure you get off any kind of oils, dirt, anything like that. Like I said, isopropyl alcohol will do, any kind of alcohol wipe, whatever. Next up is a test fit. Now, with these lower splitters, it is worth noting, at least as mentioned from Horizon Motorsports on their website, they do state that you may see a little bit of a gap in the back. I don't know if this is an issue across the board with other lower splitters, but they do at least mention that you might run into that issue and that you might want to put something back there if you have a bright colored car. I mean, Yasmarina blue is kind of bright, but I don't know. I'm looking at it. I don't really, it's not significant enough for me to mind. All right, so test fit is good. I'm gonna clean the area again, just to make sure I'm 100% good, because I was kind of, touching some of the paint a little bit. So I wanna make sure that is clean. And then after that, I'm gonna put on some 3M double-sided tape. You really don't need a lot of this stuff. I kind of learned that lesson with the upper splitters. I think the first time that I did the upper splitters, I layered like 3 strips on the top and underneath. That was just overkill. So again, this stuff works really, really well. You don't need a whole lot of it, but because the lower splitters are a larger surface area, I'm gonna do 2 like main strips on the flat side and then the underneath. Now, since I'm talking this through a little bit later on, I can tell you that even though I did try putting on a strip on the outside, like the outer vertical side of the lower splitter, that's not necessary. It doesn't really stick. It's kind of a little bit wider than the actual splitter there. So I noticed that when I tried to squeeze it together, it just pops right back out. But I don't think that's an issue because again, with the main strips on the inside and then on the underside, it holds perfectly well. Now, when getting these installed, this is obviously the tricky part, because if you don't do this right, you're gonna get it stuck ahead of time. I feel like you have a little bit of time before it really like adheres, where if you kind of get it into place and it's not stuck quite right, you have like a couple of seconds of an abort mode before it's like really fully adhered. So you gotta find that balance of accurate and quick. I kind of bend the splitter open a little bit to try to get it on, and then it's just brute force to get it into place. All right, so now that it's on, I'm just gonna push down and try to create a seal with the double-sided tape. Okay, so on to the front lip. So again, just like with the lower splitters, gonna do a test fit. Now with this, I'm using the painter's tape in order to kind of hold it in place. Obviously the front is gonna be heavy, it's gonna wanna pull down a little bit, but even if you take that in place, then the back is gonna wanna fall. So it is a little tricky to do this by yourself, but if you can kind of wedge something underneath the front lip, that does make it a little easier. Now, another lesson that I learned from installing my last front lip, initially I attempted to start at the inner corners right outside the center there, where the centerpiece meets the lower splitters. So I thought maybe like making sure that those corners were perfect and then working out from there was a good idea. It's not. Even though that lined up, I found that getting it to the edges did not work. However, when I started with the edges, everything lined up fine. So I'm just gonna go with that again this time. So I'm gonna start with the outer edge and then just work around from there. Actually, I'm gonna do the outer edge on this side and then go and hit the outer edge on the other side. So once I get those 2 edges, then I'll kind of work my way around. Now this front lip has 8 mounting holes, and the 4 in the middle, like I mentioned before, they seem to line up pretty perfectly with the 4 8mm bolts that hold the plastic tray in the center underneath. I did find that I was able to reuse the 8mm bolts in the 2 center holes, but not on the outer ones. So I went ahead and used screws instead. I don't know, that worked. I didn't over tighten here, so I kind of went through, got all the bolts and screws in place, got it like reasonably tightened, and then once all of the screws and bolts were into place, then I went back and made sure everything was very tight. All right, I'm gonna save the review for the end. Suffice it to say, I kinda like it. Okay, so now for the detailing aspect of this. And I'm gonna wipe everything down with the CarPro eraser again, just to make sure all my grubby fingerprints are off all of the carbon fiber. Now this is gonna be kind of an optional step. I just wanna make sure that there's no contaminants on the carbon fiber, so I'm gonna use my auto scrub and some nanoskin glide and just make sure that it gets any embedded contaminants out of the carbon fiber. And then the Dr. Beasley stuff. Again, I love this stuff. So I'm gonna put this on the foam applicator, kind of work it into the carbon fiber a little bit, and then get the Rupes polisher to actually buff it out. So I'm just gonna go through all of this back and forth, nice even kind of pacing here. Again, I wish I had the 1-inch version because that would do a lot better for getting sort of the inside corners here and stuff. They're a little bit hard to reach, but this 3-inch one will still do a pretty good job. And once that is done, I'm just gonna wipe everything down with a high pile microfiber towel, and we are good to go. Dude, this is like a mirror finish. This is so good. All right, and the last step are the scratch guards. Now, here's the thing. These are kind of tricky, so what you do is get the red side started first. At least pull off a little section of it, right? Then pull off the white backing, attach that, like line it up, attach it to the section of a guard. Once it's on, press down firmly on all the different sections. Make sure it's attached real well. Then, once that's on, go back to the section that you started, the red backing side, kind of create a little bit more room there, and then in one sort of quick, forceful motion, pull straight back. If you don't do that, if you try to do it slowly, it's gonna pull up the adhesive off the guards. I will say, I kind of did this a little dopily. I started in the corner here because I thought at first I was only going to apply them to the middle, because you notice there's like a bend to the front lip. So I thought I was just going to do the middle, and it was like, actually no, it would make sense to do it you know, all the way through, because actually it's the lower left and right sides which would be prone to scraping if I was coming off of a corner, you know, at a diagonal. So I started on the left side of the inner front lip, but you probably should just start edge to edge. All right, guys, well, a new look is born here, so I am very happy with how this has come out. I haven't 100% decided on the upper splitters, but I'm probably gonna keep them. I was sort of surprised. I kind of thought this would be too much carbon fiber, but it's really, yeah, it really comes together like pretty nicely. And again, my main concern was this. Like, I just always thought with the lower splitters, with this, it just kind of creates this unnatural sort of looking, you know, just sort of cutout here. But yeah, it's really not that bad. And again, we have these same lower splitters on Nardo, but I think, you know, with Nardo it always looked normal to me. It looked fine. I just kind of thought it'd be weird with something like a Yasmarina blue or another bright color, but yeah, it's really nice. So I'm all right with them. And but let's talk about the front lip, because that's like the main thing I think here, and that is like this particular lip. Again, this is the HMV1 from Horizon Motorsports, and I love this thing. Absolutely love it. It has a very similar shape to my old Veris style lip, again, except for here being filled in, so I'm not trying to cram a washman in here to clean it. That's kind of cool. I do love this sort of curve right here. This kind of comes up just a little bit. It's just like a certain angle it comes up. But also mainly, it has a very sort of three-dimensional shape to it, I think, right? Like, you know how like you get a lot of front lips, they just kind of have like a flat 2D design, and they, you know, kind of come down, angle a little bit, and go straight across. But this has got like a lot of kind of different, you know, curves and angles and everything, and I think it maintains that sexiness with the curves, but it's aggressive. It's very nice and aggressive. I would mention, though, that the clearance for this thing, again, this car is all stock suspension for now, but the clearance on the slip is ridiculous. So it is a little bit, it does make it a little bit low. When I put this on low profile Rams and put a low profile Daytona jack under it, there is like that much clearance. So just a heads up on this thing is if you have a lowered car, it's a little, I mean, that's really the case with most front lips, I feel like, but this one in particular, it does dip down quite a bit. Otherwise, it is fantastic. I love it. I love the look of this. I love that it's back again. I haven't had a front lip on this car in like a couple of months now. So yeah, it kind of feels like we're back to, you know, back to having a completed look on the front end. Love that. So now let's talk about issues real quick, because there are a couple that are worth mentioning. Now, when it comes to the lower splitters, not really. I think the fitment of these was great. However, and as mentioned on Horizon Motorsports website, there is a tiny little gap that you can see in the back there. Now, I think it depends on how you fit it, whether or not that's consistent or whether or not it's off on one side, whatever. I don't think it's a big enough deal, right? Like I kind of knew about it going in, so that was helpful. But while doing the test fit and seeing that gap back there, I don't think it was significant enough to try to cover it up with something, or, you know, whatever. I don't know. It just, in my opinion, and I can certainly be like super hypercritical about stuff like this, but it just didn't really, the way that it looks just didn't set off any alarms that it was like, you know, this isn't gonna work, or I need to try to figure out a way to cover this up. I think if you're looking at it, like, we all hyper obsess over the way that a part looks or the way that something fits or something like that, but when you look at this, or me looking at this, I don't think it's a big enough deal. The front lip, on the other hand, is where we had a couple of problems, and I think it's worth mentioning how Horizon handled this issue, because we did have a little bit of a back and forth. So when I got the front lip, first thing I noticed is that there was a little bit of damage to the underneath. Now, when I say damage, it wasn't damaged, I think, in handling or transit. It was during the manufacturing process. You could tell, if you ran your hand over it, it was perfectly smooth, but you could see I don't even know if it's a marring or just some sort of imperfection in the carbon fiber. So that was one thing. The other thing is that the hardware that was provided was completely inadequate to secure this thing to a bumper. It came with like, it's like 3/4 inch or 1 inch screws There were maybe 2 holes where those screws would have worked, and everywhere else you needed something longer. So the provided hardware was never going to work, hence the screws that I got from Amazon to get this in place. That came out weird. The screws that I bought from Amazon to get this in place. And then the third thing was that one of the holes had, like, I guess the molding process, there was something that was kind of in the way of the hole, so like you couldn't put a screw all the way through. You had to, I ended up having to get a drill bit and hollow that out so that I could, to make it clear for a screw to pass through. So, you know, any one of these issues, I'm not sure it's a huge deal, at least in the case of the damage. It was on the underside of the bumper, so it was something that you were never gonna see, and I certainly didn't wanna go through the hassle of an exchange or a return for something like that. However, with the compilation of issues, I did reach out to Horizon and was like, you know, we had these issues, like, what do you think? And I have to give them credit. They came right back, presented the options. I mean, obviously they, you know, they do the returns and everything. Some places do the return with the restocking fee. In this case, because it was an issue, that wasn't going to be the case. They offered an exchange. But also, third option is they just offered a partial refund. Like, hey, if you're cool to keep this and you don't feel like going through the hassle, here's a partial refund on the order to try to make it right. So I appreciated that and I took it. In addition to that, they also provided a discount on the lower splitters. So, you know, I think we're super quick to, you know, criticize and complain when something doesn't go right, but I think it's worth pointing out when someone does a good job at customer service. And yeah, overall, I think it was a good buying experience. I don't think the problems that I did run into were really that big of a deal. And very happy with the outcome of all of that. So anyway, guys, so I hope you have found this video helpful. Hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments what you think about this new look. I'm still processing it, but I'm very happy with it. When it got done, I was kind of surprised on how much I liked it right off the bat. So anyway, again, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.